Socrates follows this method that we just outlined and gives three arguments, right? Because we're supposed to follow reason. So he gives three arguments that are intended to demonstrate that he ought not to escape. That is, it's the wrong thing to do for him to escape, as his friend Crito has tried to arrange for him. And let's take a look at the three arguments, and then I'm going to want you to weigh in on whether you think these are good arguments or bad moral arguments. So let's take a look at the first one. The first one proceeds from an assumption that we ought never to harm anyone. That is, it's wrong to harm anyone, and that's why we should never do it. Okay, that is kind of a moral principle. It seems to be right. Really, we really shouldn't harm any. Think about it. And I put it in the third person for Socrates. If Socrates escapes, he would do harm to society. And if it's not clear to you, just to be specific, he's harming them by violating their laws, showing disrespect to society and to the state's laws. And from that, he concludes, therefore, that Socrates ought not to escape, that it's the wrong thing for him to do to escape. So there is Socrates' first argument. You might want to stop and think about it. Does it sound like a good argument? If not, why not? After we go through all three, I'm going to ask you to open up the discussion board and answer the question. Weigh in on all three arguments, whether you think they're good arguments or bad arguments, and why. Let's now turn to his second argument. Second argument about why he shouldn't escape. He starts out, we ought to keep our promises. If you think about it, makes a lot of sense. If you promise your best friend you're going to spend the weekend with him or her, that's what you ought to do. Or your elderly grandmother, or whatever, or whomever. Well, if Socrates escapes, he'd be breaking a promise. What's the promise that they're talking about? We sometimes talk about a social contract, and I think this is one of the earliest cases in recorded history where somebody appeals to a social contract. The idea is that by living in a society, by living in a certain state, he has tacitly agreed to follow the rules. He had an option to leave, but since he stayed, he has made a promise that he would follow the laws of the state. And from that, he concludes, therefore, again, he ought not to escape, that it's wrong for him to run away. Stop it here. Think about this for a while. Is this a good argument? If so, why? And if not, explain why this is not a good argument. Now, finally, let's turn to Socrates' third argument for his not escaping. Excuse me. He starts, we ought to obey or respect our parents and teachers. In general, it seems right. Our teachers teach us things. I'm not just saying that because I happen to be a teacher. Parents help us out when they defend us when we're young. They bring us up. They try to make us. They try to give us a certain background that's going to help us in life in general. If Socrates escapes, he'll be disobeying society, which served as his parents and teachers. Right? His parents and teachers are telling him to stay and follow the law. He had his trial, take the punishment. Conclusion, therefore, Socrates ought not to escape. Okay, we have three arguments. They look like some plausible arguments. What I'd like you to do is stop it here after this segment, after this video, and I want you to think about it and write a thoughtful post on the discussion board about, are Socrates' arguments good or bad arguments, and why are they good or bad arguments?